The autumn leaves danced outside the tall windows of Kensington Palace as William sat quietly in his study, staring at the letter that had arrived that morning. The royal seal seemed heavier than usual, and the words inside carried news that would change everything. Kate found him there an hour later, still holding the same piece of paper, his usually bright eyes clouded with concern. "What is it, darling?" she asked softly, settling into the chair beside his desk. They had been married for over a decade, and she could read his expressions like a favorite book. This wasn't the look of someone dealing with regular royal duties or public appearances. This was something deeper, more personal. William looked up at his wife, taking in her gentle smile and the way the afternoon light caught the auburn highlights in her hair. "It's from the Commonwealth Council," he said finally. "They're requesting that I take on a new role, but it would mean—" He paused, struggling to find the right words. "It would mean leaving England for 3 years, leading a humanitarian mission in Southeast Asia." Kate's breath caught in her throat. 3 years felt like a lifetime when you had 3 young children and a life built around traditions and expectations. Yet she could see something in William's eyes that she hadn't seen in months, a spark of genuine excitement mixed with the worry. The couple had been feeling the weight of royal expectations more heavily lately. Every public appearance was scrutinized, every decision debated by the press and the public. They loved their country and their duties, but sometimes the golden cage felt smaller than usual. This opportunity represented something different, a chance to make a real difference in the world, away from the constant glare of British media. "Tell me more about it," Kate said, reaching across to take his hand. Her wedding ring caught the light, reminding them both of the vows they had made to support each other through everything. William's voice grew stronger as he explained the mission. It involved working with local communities to improve education and healthcare access, something both he and Kate had always been passionate about. The role would utilize his military background and her psychology degree in ways their current royal duties never allowed. "But the children," Kate said, voicing what they were both thinking. "George is just settling into his new school, and Charlotte is finally making friends. And Louis," she trailed off, thinking of their youngest, who was still so small and needed stability. They talked late into the evening, weighing the pros and cons, discussing what this could mean for their family and their future. The decision wouldn't just affect them, it would impact the entire royal family, their staff, and the British public who had grown to love them. That night, as they lay in bed listening to the familiar sounds of London beyond their walls, both knew that whatever they decided, their lives were about to change dramatically. The quiet moment felt precious, like the calm before a storm that would reshape everything they thought they knew about their destiny. Outside, the city continued its eternal rhythm, unaware that inside the palace walls, a conversation was taking place that would soon touch the hearts of millions around the world. The couple held each other a little tighter that night, sensing that their quiet life as they knew it was about to end, replaced by something uncertain, but potentially extraordinary. William found himself thinking about his mother, Diana, and how she had always encouraged him to follow his heart and use his position to help others. Kate thought about the kind of legacy they wanted to leave for their children. One of duty, yes, but also of courage and compassion. As dawn broke over London, they both knew that the easy answer would be to decline the offer and continue their comfortable, predictable royal life. But neither of them had ever been content with easy answers, and this opportunity felt like a calling they couldn't ignore, even if it meant saying goodbye to everything familiar and beloved. The family meeting was held in the warm sitting room where the children usually played with their toys, scattered across the Persian rug. William and Kate had spent days preparing for this conversation, knowing that explaining their decision to George, Charlotte, and Louis would be one of the hardest things they had ever done. George, now 10 years old and wise beyond his years, sat cross-legged on the floor, his serious blue eyes fixed on his parents. Charlotte curled up in Kate's lap, sensing the importance of the moment even if she didn't fully understand it. Little Louis played quietly with his wooden trains, occasionally looking up when he heard his name mentioned. "We want to talk to you about something very important," Kate began, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Daddy has been offered a special job, one that could help many people who don't have the things we're lucky to have." William knelt down to be at eye level with his children. "It's in a place very far away where children don't have enough schools or doctors. We could help build better schools and make sure sick people get the medicine they need. George's face scrunched up in confusion. But don't we already help people here? Don't we have to stay and be royal? The question hit harder than any criticism from the press ever had. Kate exchanged a glance with William before answering. Being royal means serving others, and sometimes that service takes us to unexpected places. Great-grandmama always taught us that our duty is to help wherever we're needed most. Charlotte's small voice piped up from Kate's lap. Will we see Grandpa Charles? And Uncle Harry? The innocence of the question brought tears to Kate's eyes. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that serving others sometimes means leaving the people you love? Over the following weeks, the family had many more conversations. They looked at maps together, learning about the countries where they might be going. Kate read them stories about children from different cultures, and William showed them pictures of the schools and hospitals they could help improve. The children's reactions varied from day to day. Sometimes George seemed excited about the adventure, talking about seeing elephants and learning new languages. Other times he worried about missing his friends and his football team. Charlotte was concerned about her pony and whether they could take their dog Orla with them. The adults in their lives had mixed reactions too. Some courtiers thought the idea was admirable but impractical. Others worried about the security implications and the precedent it might set. The Queen, however, surprised everyone with her response during a private family dinner. Your great-grandfather once told me that the monarchy survives by evolving, she said, looking directly at William. Perhaps it's time we showed the world that royal service isn't limited by geography or tradition. The public relations team worked overtime preparing statements and managing the inevitable media speculation. Rumors began circulating in the press with some newspapers praising the couple's humanitarian spirit while others questioned whether they were abandoning their British responsibilities. Kate found herself spending extra time with each child individually, trying to address their specific concerns. She took Charlotte on special mother-daughter outings, creating memories they could carry with them. William taught George more about responsibility and what it meant to be part of something bigger than yourself. The hardest moment came when Louis, barely understanding what was happening, asked if they were moving because he had been naughty. Kate scooped him up, holding him tight as she explained that sometimes families make big changes not because anyone did anything wrong, but because they want to help make the world a better place. Friends and family began planning farewell gatherings, though the official announcement hadn't been made yet. Kate's parents, Carol and Michael Middleton, struggled with the idea of their grandchildren being so far away, but ultimately supported the decision, recognizing the positive impact their daughter and son-in-law could make. As the days passed, the weight of their choice became more real. This wasn't just about accepting a job or taking on new responsibilities. It was about uprooting their entire lives, leaving behind the security and familiarity of everything they had known, and trusting that love and commitment could sustain them through the challenges ahead. The children began to understand that this journey would be different from their usual royal travels. This wouldn't be a brief visit with return flights already booked. This would be their new life, at least for several years, in a place where everything from the food to the language would be unfamiliar. Yet despite the uncertainty and the difficulty of the decision, something beautiful was happening within their family. The challenge was bringing them closer together, making them more intentional about their time together and more aware of what truly mattered to them. The day of the official announcement arrived with typical London drizzle, as if the sky itself was reflecting the bittersweet nature of the news. William and Kate stood before the cameras in the palace's blue drawing room, their hands clasped together, presenting a united front despite the storm of emotions they were both feeling inside. The press conference was unlike any they had given before. Usually, royal announcements were formal affairs with carefully scripted statements. This time, their words came from the heart, with Kate's voice occasionally catching as she spoke about their hopes for the mission and their love for the British people. This decision wasn't made lightly, William said, his military bearing evident as he addressed the gathered journalists. We've thought carefully about how we can best serve, not just our country but the Commonwealth and the world. Sometimes the greatest service requires the greatest sacrifice, Kate added. We're not leaving because we love Britain any less. We're going because we believe the values Britain taught us, compassion, service, and duty, can make a difference in places where hope is scarce. The reaction was immediate and intense. Social media exploded with opinions ranging from heartfelt support to harsh criticism. Some called them heroes for choosing service over comfort. Others accused them of abandoning their duties when the country needed stable leadership. The children watched parts of the news coverage from their private sitting room, trying to understand why strangers on television were talking about their family with such strong emotions. Kate found Charlotte crying that evening, overwhelmed by seeing their private decision become public property. "Why are some people angry with us, Mummy?" Charlotte asked, her small face crumpled with confusion. Kate held her daughter close, struggling to explain how complicated adult emotions could be, especially when it came to change and tradition. The weeks following the announcement were a whirlwind of preparation and goodbye ceremonies. The couple met with dozens of organizations, briefing their successors and ensuring that their patronages would continue to thrive in their absence. Each meeting felt like closing a chapter of their lives. Kate's final visit to her mental health charity was particularly emotional. She had worked for years to reduce the stigma around mental health issues, and seeing the progress they had made together made leaving even more difficult. The staff surprised her with a scrapbook of letters from people whose lives had been touched by her work. William's last official military engagement was equally moving. His fellow servicemen presented him with a compass engraved with the words "True North," a reminder that no matter where his journey took him, he would always find his way back to what mattered most. The Queen hosted a private family dinner where 3 generations gathered around the same table where countless royal decisions had been discussed over the decades. The conversation was warm but tinged with sadness, as everyone knew this would be their last such gathering for several years. Prince Charles spoke about the courage it took to chart a new course, drawing parallels to his own journey as he prepared to become king. "The monarchy has always been about service," he said, raising his glass. "You're simply expanding our definition of where that service can take place." The children were enrolled in international schools in their new location, with teachers who specialized in helping diplomatic families adjust to new cultures. Kate spent hours researching everything from local customs to climate considerations, wanting to prepare her family as thoroughly as possible. Packing their personal belongings was heartbreaking in ways they hadn't expected. Every toy, every photograph, every small memento carried memories of their life in England. Kate found herself holding on to items longer than necessary, as if the physical act of packing was making their departure too real. The staff at Kensington Palace worked tirelessly to ensure a smooth transition. Many had served the royal family for decades and were devastated to see William and Kate leave. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, had watched the children grow up and struggled to maintain her professional composure during their final weeks together. Security preparations were extensive and complicated, involving coordination between British intelligence and the security services of their destination country. The logistics of moving a royal family halfway around the world while maintaining their safety required months of planning. Local newspapers began running countdown features, marking the days until the family's departure. Some focused on their achievements and the legacy they were leaving behind. Others speculated about whether they would ever return to resume their traditional royal roles. Through it all, William and Kate remained focused on their children and each other. They established new bedtime routines that included talking about their feelings and practicing gratitude for both what they were leaving behind and what they might discover ahead. The weight of their decision seemed to grow heavier with each passing day, but so did their certainty that they were making the right choice. They were trading the known for the unknown, comfort for challenge, but they were doing it together, and that made all the difference. The farewell tour began with a visit to the places that had shaped their love story. William and Kate walked hand in hand through the grounds of St. Andrew's University, where they had first met as students more than 20 years earlier. The autumn air was crisp, and fallen leaves crunched beneath their feet as they retraced the paths they had walked as young people with no idea they would one day change each other's lives forever. "Do you remember the first time you really noticed me?" Kate asked, a playful smile crossing her face as they paused near the library where they had spent countless hours studying. William laughed, the sound carrying across the empty courtyard. "You mean besides that infamous fashion show? I think it was during that geography project when you corrected my terrible map reading skills. You were so patient even when I mixed up the coordinates completely." They visited the small cafe where they had shared their first official date, the dormitory where Kate had lived, and the rugby pitch where William had played while she cheered from the sidelines. Each location held layers of memories, the nervous excitement of new love, the comfort of growing friendship, and the gradual realization that they wanted to spend their lives together. Their next stop was Anglesey, the Welsh island where they had lived as newlyweds while William served as a search and rescue pilot. The cottage they had rented seemed smaller than they remembered, but it had been their first real home together, away from the formal structures of royal life. Kate stood in the tiny kitchen where she had learned to cook William's favorite meals, remembering the simple joy of those early married days. "I was so nervous about burning your dinner," she confided. "I practiced making that chicken casserole at least 10 times before you came home." William wrapped his arms around her from behind, looking out the window at the sea beyond. "Those were some of the happiest days of my life. Just us, no protocol, no schedules, just figuring out how to be married." They spent an hour walking along the beach where they had taken their dog Lupo for countless runs, where they had talked about their dreams and fears, where they had decided they were ready to start a family. The waves crashed against the rocks with the same rhythm they remembered, but everything else had changed so much. From Wales, they traveled to Norfolk to Anmer Hall, their country home where their children had taken their first steps, spoken their first words, and created the foundation of their family life. The house felt different knowing they wouldn't return for several years, every room holding echoes of laughter and love. Kate walked through the nursery that had housed all 3 of their babies, touching the crib mobile that had spun above each of their children's heads. The rocking chair where she had nursed them through countless midnight feedings sat empty now, waiting for a future that felt both distant and uncertain. William found her there, seeing the tears she was trying so hard to hold back. "We'll make new memories," he said softly. "Different ones, but just as precious." The children joined them for a final picnic in their favorite meadow, the same field where they had learned to ride bicycles and fly kites. George had grown tall enough to reach the apple tree branches that had once been beyond his grasp. Charlotte collected wildflowers with the same intensity she had shown as a toddler. Louis ran through the grass with his arms spread wide, pretending to be an airplane. That evening, Kate's parents hosted a family dinner in their Berkshire home. Carol Middleton had cooked all of Kate's favorite childhood dishes, creating one last taste of home before their daughter embarked on this new adventure. The conversation was lighter than expected, filled with funny family stories and gentle teasing. Michael Middleton pulled William aside after dinner, walking with him through the garden where Kate had played as a child. "Take care of our girl," he said simply, "and take care of yourself. You're both braver than I could ever be." Pippa and James, Kate's siblings, had organized a surprise gathering of their closest friends. The group met at a private club in London, away from cameras and public attention for one final evening together. The conversation flowed like wine, jumping from shared memories to inside jokes to heartfelt expressions of love and support. Sarah, Kate's oldest friend from school, stood to make a toast. "To William and Kate, who are teaching us all that love isn't just about staying together in one place, but about being willing to go anywhere together to make the world better." The evening ended with promises to stay connected, plans for visits and the exchange of small gifts that could be packed and carried to their new home. Kate received a photo album filled with pictures from their friendship over the years, while William was given a bottle of whiskey from their wedding year to be opened when they returned home. As they drove back to Kensington Palace through the quiet London streets, both William and Kate felt the weight of what they were leaving behind. But they also felt something else, a growing excitement about the unknown adventure ahead and a deepening appreciation for the love that had brought them this far. The farewell tour had reminded them of their journey together, from university students to young marrieds to parents to this moment when they were about to write an entirely new chapter in their story. Each goodbye had been difficult, but each had also reinforced their certainty that they were making this journey together, and that was what mattered most. The final week in London passed in a blur of last-minute preparations, official ceremonies, and private moments that felt precious beyond measure. Buckingham Palace had organized a formal farewell reception, bringing together representatives from every organization and charity with which William and Kate had worked during their time as senior royals. The great ballroom filled with familiar faces, from CEOs of major charities to grassroots volunteers who had dedicated their lives to service. Kate moved through the crowd in a midnight blue dress that had become one of her signatures, stopping to speak personally with as many people as possible. Each conversation felt like a small goodbye, each handshake a promise that their work would continue even across the distance. An elderly woman approached Kate near the end of the evening, her hand shaking slightly as she reached out. "Your Royal Highness, I wanted to thank you for visiting my grandson's school last year. He's autistic, and after you spoke about accepting differences, the other children started including him more. You changed his life." Kate knelt down to the woman's eye level, taking her weathered hands in her own. "He changed mine too," she replied softly. "Children like your grandson taught me that everyone has something valuable to offer. I'll carry that lesson with me wherever I go." The Queen hosted one final private dinner for the immediate family, a quiet affair in her private dining room where the portraits of past monarchs seemed to watch over them with approval. The conversation was lighter than expected, filled with shared memories and gentle humor that had sustained the family through decades of public service. As the evening wound down, the Queen pulled William aside for a private moment. "Your grandmother would be very proud," she said, referring to the Queen Mother, who had always encouraged the younger royals to follow their hearts. She always believed that duty came in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest duty requires the greatest courage. The children's final days were filled with special activities designed to help them say goodbye to their London life. They visited the London Eye one last time, had tea at their favorite cafe in Notting Hill, and spent an afternoon at the Natural History Museum, where they had learned to love dinosaurs and minerals and the wonders of the natural world. Charlotte insisted on visiting the stables one final time to say goodbye to her pony, Pip. She had written a letter explaining where she was going and asking the stable hands to take extra good care of her four-legged friend. The sight of her small figure hugging the pony's neck while whispering secrets into his ear moved everyone present to tears. George organized a final football match with his school friends in Kensington Gardens, playing with the intensity of someone who knew it would be his last game on familiar ground for a long time. His teammates surprised him with a signed football that he could take with him, a tangible reminder of the friendships that would span continents. Even little Louis seemed to understand the magnitude of what was happening. He spent extra time with his favorite toys, as if trying to memorize their feel and weight. Kate found him one morning having a serious conversation with his stuffed elephant, explaining that they were going on a big adventure together. The staff at Kensington Palace organized their own farewell ceremony, presenting the family with a specially commissioned photo album chronicling their years in residence. Mrs. Patterson, the head housekeeper, broke protocol by hugging each of the children, whispering individual messages of love and encouragement. William's former military colleagues arranged a private gathering where they presented him with a compass that had belonged to a decorated war hero. "So you can always find your way back home," his commanding officer explained. "But more importantly, so you always know you're heading in the right direction." Kate's final solo engagement was particularly emotional. She visited a women's shelter where she had worked quietly for years, helping women rebuild their lives after escaping domestic violence. The women there had prepared a small ceremony, presenting her with letters from survivors whose lives had been touched by her advocacy. One young mother stepped forward, holding her toddler's hand. "You made me believe I deserved better," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "Because of you, my daughter will grow up knowing her worth. That's a gift that travels anywhere." The last-minute packing was both practical and emotional. Kate carefully wrapped family photographs, William's military medals, and the children's most treasured belongings. Each item that went into the boxes was a piece of their British life that would help make their new house feel like home. The final evening was spent quietly at home, ordering takeaway from their favorite local restaurant and watching a family movie on the sofa. They didn't talk about the journey ahead or the life they were leaving behind. Instead, they simply enjoyed being together, laughing at silly jokes and arguing good-naturedly about whether to have ice cream for dessert. As the children finally settled into sleep, William and Kate walked through their empty home one last time. The walls that had witnessed their children's growth, their quiet conversations, their celebrations and challenges, now stood bare but somehow still warm with memory. Standing in their bedroom, Looking out at the London skyline they had seen from this window for so many years, they held each other close. Tomorrow would bring departure, adventure, and uncertainty. Tonight was just theirs, the last quiet moment before their new life began. The morning of departure dawned gray and drizzly, typical London weather that somehow felt appropriate for such a momentous goodbye. The family woke early, not from alarms but from the nervous energy that had kept them all sleeping lightly. Kate found William already up, standing by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city wake up beyond the palace gates. "Having second thoughts?" she asked, joining him with her own steaming mug. William turned to her with a smile that mixed uncertainty with determination. "Every 5 minutes," he admitted. "But then I remember why we're doing this and the doubts fade." The children were unusually quiet during breakfast, the magnitude of the day settling over them like a heavy blanket. George pushed his eggs around his plate without eating much, while Charlotte kept checking to make sure her special stuffed rabbit was still in her carry-on bag. Louis seemed to sense the mood and stayed close to Kate, climbing into her lap whenever she sat down. The cars arrived precisely on time, a small convoy that would take them to the airport for their private flight. As they loaded the last of their luggage, Kate noticed that several members of their staff had gathered in the courtyard, many wiping away tears as they watched the family prepare to leave. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward with a small wrapped package. "For the journey," she said, simply pressing it into Kate's hands. Inside was a tin of homemade shortbread cookies, the same recipes she had been making for the royal family for over 30 years. The gesture was so simple yet so thoughtful that Kate found herself struggling to maintain her composure. The drive through London felt different, as if they were seeing the city through new eyes. The children pressed their faces to the windows, pointing out familiar landmarks and asking questions about when they would see them again. Big Ben, the Thames, the parks where they had played. Everything looked simultaneously familiar and foreign, like a beloved book being read for the last time. At RAF Northolt, a small crowd had gathered despite the early hour and the attempts to keep their departure private. Royal fans, some of whom had followed the family for years, held signs with messages of support and love. "Thank you for your service," one banner read. "Come home safely," said another. William and Kate had debated whether to acknowledge the crowd, knowing that any interaction would delay their departure and potentially become emotional. In the end, they decided to walk over briefly, wanting to thank the people who had supported them through the years. An elderly man in a military uniform stepped forward, his medals glinting in the pale morning light. "Served under your grandmother during the war," he told William. "She'd be proud of what you're doing. Sometimes the bravest thing is leaving home to help others find theirs." A young mother lifted her toddler so the little girl could wave at Kate. She wanted to say goodbye to the pretty princess, the woman explained, her voice catching slightly. Kate reached out to touch the child's hand, remembering all the similar moments over the years when small gestures had meant everything. The boarding process was surreal. Walking up the steps of the aircraft that would carry them away from everything they had known, Kate paused at the top of the stairs, looking back at the group of people who had come to see them off. She raised her hand in a final wave, trying to memorize the moment and the faces looking up at them. Inside the plane, the children settled into their seats with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The aircraft had been specially configured for the long journey, with comfortable seating and space for the family to move around during the extended flight time. Despite the luxury, there was no escaping the reality that each mile traveled would take them further from home. As the plane taxied to the runway, Kate helped Louis look out the window at the shrinking buildings below. "Look, darling," she said softly. "We can see our whole life from up here." London spread out beneath them like a living map, every street and building holding memories of their years as a family. William reached across the aisle to take Kate's hand as the plane lifted into the gray English sky. Below them, the countryside they had explored on countless weekend trips gradually gave way to the Channel, then to the European mainland, then to landscapes they had never seen before. The Queen had arranged for a message to be delivered once they were airborne. It was brief, but heartfelt. "Carry Britain's values with you always, but remember that home is wherever your family is together. With love and pride, grandmother." Hours into the flight, as the children napped and the English coastline was far behind them, William and Kate found themselves talking quietly about their hopes and fears for the journey ahead. They spoke about the schools their children would attend, the work they would do, the communities they hoped to serve. "Do you think we'll be the same people when we come back?" Kate asked, watching clouds drift past the window. William considered the question carefully. "I hope not," he said finally. "I hope we'll be better people, more aware of the world beyond our own experience. I hope the children will grow up understanding that privilege comes with responsibility, and that sometimes responsibility requires sacrifice." As night fell and the plane flew steadily eastward, the family settled into the rhythm of long-distance travel. The children were excited about the movies they could watch and the snacks they could eat, while William and Kate alternated between helping with entertainment and staring out the windows at the changing landscape below. Somewhere over Eastern Europe, as most of the family slept, Kate found herself thinking about all the people they had left behind and all the people they were traveling to meet. The journey felt like a bridge between two worlds, carrying them from the known to the unknown, from comfort to challenge, from one chapter of their lives to the next. The plane descended through tropical clouds toward their new home, and as the landscape came into view below them, the family pressed against the windows in wonder. Lush green mountains rose from crystal-clear waters, and small villages dotted the coastline like scattered jewels. It was beautiful in a way that was completely different from the rolling English countryside they had left behind. "Is that where we're going to live?" Charlotte asked, her small voice filled with awe as she pointed to a cluster of buildings near the shore. "That's our new adventure," Kate replied, smoothing her daughter's hair as they all watched their destination grow larger through the windows. The airport was smaller than Heathrow, but the welcome was no less warm. Local officials had arranged a simple ceremony, with children from nearby schools holding flowers and waving small flags. The tropical air hit them like a gentle embrace as they stepped off the plane, carrying the scents of exotic flowers and sea salt. William and Kate had requested that their arrival be kept low-key, wanting to focus on their humanitarian mission rather than royal pageantry. Still, word had spread through the local community, and people lined the route to their new home, waving and calling out welcomes in languages the family was still learning. Their new house was a colonial-style building surrounded by gardens filled with plants and flowers they had never seen before. It was beautiful but unfamiliar, with high ceilings and wide verandas designed for the tropical climate. The children ran through the rooms, their voices echoing in the empty spaces as they claimed bedrooms and discovered hidden nooks, perfect for reading or playing. Kate stood in what would be her new kitchen, so different from the cozy spaces she had known in England. Everything would be different here. The food, the rhythms of daily life, even the sounds that would wake them each morning. Instead of London traffic, they would hear tropical birds and the distant sound of waves. "Mummy, come see," Louis called from the garden, where he had discovered a tree with bright orange fruits hanging from its branches. "Can we eat these?" The learning curve was steep but exciting. Local staff helped them navigate everything from the different electrical systems to the seasonal patterns of tropical weather. The children's new schools were welcoming, with experienced teachers who understood the challenges of helping diplomatic families adjust to their new environment. Within weeks, their new routine began to take shape. William's work took him to rural villages where he helped assess the need for new schools and medical clinics. Kate focused on maternal and child health programs, working with local women to improve access to prenatal care and nutrition education. The children adapted faster than their parents had expected. George joined a local football club where the game was played with the same passion, but different techniques. Charlotte discovered a love for tropical flowers and began learning their names in both English and the local language. Louis made friends with the gardener's grandson, communicating through gestures and laughter when words failed. 3 months after their arrival, Kate received a letter from Mrs. Patterson back at Kensington Palace. Along with updates about life in London, she included pressed flowers from the gardens Kate had tended and photographs of the staff going about their daily routines. The letter made Kate homesick in ways she hadn't expected, but it also reminded her of how much love was supporting them from across the world. William's first major project was helping to establish a new primary school in a village where children had been walking several miles each day just to attend classes. The day the school opened, the entire community celebrated with traditional music and dancing. Watching the children run into their new classrooms, their faces bright with excitement and possibility. William felt a deep satisfaction that was different from anything his royal duties had provided. One evening, as the family sat on their veranda watching a spectacular tropical sunset, Charlotte asked the question they had all been thinking. "Do you miss home, Mummy?" Kate considered her answer carefully, looking at her children's faces in the golden light. "I miss lots of things about England," she said honestly. "I miss Grandma and Grandpa and our friends and even the rain sometimes. But home isn't just a place, it's being together as a family and taking care of each other and using what we have to help other people." William nodded, pulling Louis closer on his lap. "We carry home with us wherever we go. And someday when we go back to England, we'll carry this place with us too." 6 months into their new life, the family hosted their first major visitors, Kate's parents, who had saved for months to make the long journey. Watching the grandparents experience their new world through fresh eyes, seeing how confidently the children navigated their bilingual, bicultural existence, Kate realized how much they had all grown. The work was challenging but deeply rewarding. By the end of their first year, William had helped establish 3 new schools and 2 medical clinics. Kate's nutrition programs had reached over 1,000 mothers and children. The family had learned to navigate tropical storms, celebrate local festivals, and find joy in simple pleasures like evening walks on the beach. More importantly, they had kept their promise to each other. The distance from England and the challenges of their new environment had brought them closer together rather than pulling them apart. They had discovered that love really could overcome any obstacle, that family really was stronger than circumstance, and that service to others enriched their own lives in ways they had never imagined. As they settled into sleep each night to the sound of tropical rain or ocean waves, William and Kate knew they had made the right choice. Their quiet goodbye to their old life had led them to a new chapter filled with purpose, growth, and a deeper understanding of what it meant to serve with both their hearts and their hands. The millions, who had been moved by their farewell, continued to follow their journey through letters and occasional updates, inspired by a family that had chosen love over comfort, service over safety, and growth over the familiar embrace of tradition.